Hello, and welcome to Buffy and the Art of Story Season 5. If you love Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you love creating stories or just taking them apart to see how they work, you're in the right place. I am Lisa M. Lilly, mystery and thriller author, story expert, and founder of writingasasecondcareer.com. Today is the last episode of Season 5 of the podcast. Normally, I break down one episode of Buffy at a time, looking at the story elements and particularly the plot points. But today, as with the last episode, I will be looking at Season 5 as a whole, as well as some of the other seasons. So there are some spoilers, this time with two special guests. After that, I'll be taking a break from the podcast for 4 weeks, so come back after that for the beginning of Season 6. Okay, let's dive into the Hellmouth, or in this case, into the Zoom recording. Today, I have with me two friends who love Buffy. I met Roberta Lipp because she started commenting on this podcast, and I started listening to her podcast. She's co-host of They Coined It, a fantastic Mad Men podcast. And my friend Kerry Walsh, who I met in a Buffy discussion group at the bookstore Women and Children First in Chicago. Kerry also is a co-host of a podcast, Coaching Kerry, about Sex in the City. And Kerry and Roberta are great friends. They just met 5 minutes ago when we signed on to Zoom. So welcome to both of you. This may be the end of Kerry's and my long friendship, because when we texted about Season 5, it turns out it is not her favorite season, as we'll find out. And she was shocked that it is, if not my favorite, that there is quite a bit I like in it. So I'll just start there.
We cannot be friends.
It is not. So season 3, to spoiler my first question, Season 3 is my favorite. But that is my starting question. So Kerry, you want to, well, let's start with Roberta, actually, because Kerry's going to tell us what she hates of Season 5, and I want to start positive. But where does it rank for you, Roberta, on your most favorite to least favorite, if you have a list?
So I don't have a comprehensive list. All I know is I've been doing a slow rewatch, which I accelerated to catch up with this conversation. So I just finished Season 5, and I was really watching it through the lens of it's a lot of people's favorite, or at least high ranking, and people have mad respect for Glory as a big bad. And it's not my favorite, but I've come closer. It is more elevated than it was before. I too am a Season 3 fan, although just in this last rewatch, I feel like I might have matured a little beyond it.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? It's always been my favorite. Maybe I've just watched this too many times.
I feel like Season 5, the first time through that I watched Buffy, it was definitely not one of my favorites. I wouldn't say least favorite, but there were a lot of things I didn't like, including Glory, who I still don't love, but we'll get to that. I feel like Kerry is bursting to tell us. So Kerry, where do you put Season 5?
It switches back and forth for dead last with Season 1.
Oh, and Season 1 is wow. And I love so much about Season 1. So sometime we'll have to talk about all of the seasons.
I have a very controversial view of all of the seasons. I feel like I'm completely opposite of what most people love about Buffy. So
what's your favorite?
Yeah, what is your favorite?
6. Season 6 is my all-time, hands down, like desert island favorite season of Buffy. I would take those DVDs with me if I was stranded, with the yellow jackets somewhere.
Wow, I think we're going to have to do this again at the end of Season 6 to talk about that. Because, where does Season 6 fall for you, Roberta?
I mean, I just did a quick rewatch in my head as Kerry was presenting this. There's just things I hate about it and things I love about it. Like, I get the greatness of it. I hate the ultimate big bad. I hate that whole storyline of,
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, I'm like, I should have done that spoiler warning. Yes, so everyone, this is fully spoiled. So we're going to go into all of Buffy and potentially Angel if anyone wants to talk about that. So yes, so go ahead, spoiler away.
Well, one of the things I love about Buffy is how the big bad shifts, right? You start off, so Season 6, who I meant was Willow. I hate Dark Willow. I hate that. I hate it.
Hate it.
That made me think about something do we have a shift in season 5 for the big bad? I feel like we don't really. I had not thought about that before. And maybe that's part of what I don't love.
Me either, and me too.
So I would posit that there is a little bit of a shift, that the big bad writ large for season 5 is death, and that it comes in two forms. It comes in Joyce's illness and death, and it comes in Buffy's challenge of trying to protect her sister and ultimately having to sacrifice herself. Glory's like an afterthought.
That's so interesting because these will have aired by the time, this comes out, but they haven't now. I just recorded The Body and Forever, the next episode, and talked about, is death the antagonist in The Body, or death and grief perhaps together? And same thing in Forever, like what are who is the antagonist? So that's an interesting point, that really it is death for the season.
Camera angles might be the antagonist in The Body.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But in terms of that early in the season, Glory shows up somewhat early, but before that, I feel like the shift is the idea of the key. We don't know, is the key going to be the big bad? Is Dawn essentially the big bad? Or I guess that's the question before we even know she's the key. Is it something about Dawn? Is Dawn evil? And I feel like that doesn't work as well as some of the other early big bads, because we don't know, and because we start out with the Dracula episode that sets off Buffy's journey into herself and the Slayer, but it always has felt very one-off to me, and like you could almost just lop it out of the season.
And for the record, I wish they would.
We talked before, and you like this Dracula, right? Or mostly, right, Roberta? Or we're okay with it?
I found the notion entertaining enough, and I still do. I still respect the notion of sort of breaking the wall of, if there's a vampire slayer, there's still Dracula moves, right? So she's always heard of Dracula, and when she became a slayer and found out that vampires were real, nobody thought about, well, is Dracula real?
Yeah, by the way, Dracula's real too.
So I think that reveal and exploring it a little bit, maybe not wonderfully executed, but I respect the premise.
I think my favorite part is Spike saying, Dracula, what did he say? He's a bunch of parlor tricks or whatever. But so, Kerry, what is it about season 5? Maybe you can't even pinpoint it, but what is it that makes it way down on the list for you?
Season 5 gets demerits for kind of the same reason that season 7 gets demerits for me, which is I get lost in the middle of the season. All of the episodes start to run together. I could not tell you before I started rewatching this for this podcast, the difference between Into the Woods, and I even have to look up some of their titles because I don't remember, right? Like Crush, and I Know I Was Made to Love You. But I mean, like some of these Triangle, Listening to Fear, I could not for the life of me tell you what happened in any one of those episodes. Now, season 5 also has great episodes that I would say are some of the best in the entire series. Fool for Love.
And that's, for people who don't remember, that's the Buffy and Spike, where Spike is telling her how he killed the other Slayers, right?
Yes. But I get lost among kind of like the middle, I would say 8 to 10 episodes, where I'm just kind of like, okay, Joyce is sick. Glory keeps like sending new minions and monsters to fight the Scoobies. Okay, Riley left, but who cares? And I just kind of get lost. And so I don't like Glory as a big bad. I don't think that she's effective. I don't think that the actress is effective. I don't really think that they knew what they wanted to do with her. And then it's just kind of like Monster of the Week all linked together with Glory. And it just doesn't work for me as a season. But again, I think that this season really does have some incredible standalone episodes that lead the entire series in terms of how great they are.
Yeah, Glory, I can never quite put my finger on why I am not excited about her as a big bad, because I kind of feel like I should be. Other than that, she talks more than she does sometimes. So she threatens, but doesn't do anything. But I want to hear from Roberta, because I think I remember you did like Glory as a big bad. Am I right? Oh, no. So we're united on that.
I was really looking to find what was likable about her as a big bad. And it's just even as we're talking, I'm getting new insights, which is how it works, right? One of the things that I don't like about season 5, similar to what Kerry, what you're saying, is I get very confused about all these other bad guys running around. And it's more toward the end when they run away. And then you've got the army guys with arrows. Like it's just,
oh, right. The Knights of Byzantium and
I couldn't have told you that. Like I've never, I mean, this time I sorted it out because I watched, but I didn't even still care about their names. But there's just so many messy things, and Glory doesn't develop. And they do. I noticed some of the technique stuff that you've talked about on your podcast of they had to have then start affecting her and bringing out her humanity. Otherwise, why isn't everybody dead already? And it does go too long. It doesn't make sense, even though they start giving another reason, but it doesn't make sense why she talks so much. I think Glory was an idea that Joss had. Like, I have an idea. I'm going to make a big bad like this. And as rather than an inspiration,
like a thought of, oh, a big bad who's kind of like Cordelia and kind of a foil for Buffy, because the people I've talked to who like Glory see her as this is kind of what Buffy would be as a big bad, which I actually disagree with, but I understand in sort of a sense of she cares about fashion and her shoes and her hair, and
but why so 80s?
Yeah. Well, she just doesn't know any better.
There's a lot of female characters this season who don't know any better. Mm-hmm. It's an irritating season. There's some great stuff about it, but you and I have talked about Dawn.
Yes. Oh God. Yes.
She gets better as things progress. Yeah. Sort of. But
I sometimes feel like there's a war in my head about season 5 because you guys both know, and everyone who listens to the podcast know, I like a very structured story. I like a very strong plot. And there's a lot of episodes, to Kerry's point, that it's not just, I mean, they blur together, but also where there isn't exactly a clear story progression. I've come to appreciate the body. I didn't really care for it the first time. And some of it is it had more emotional resonance later after I went through things in my life. But a story should work whether you have had that experience or not. And I struggled in that for what is the story. And that doesn't make it bad, but it makes it less my kind of story. Forever's kind of like that as well, where Dawn's trying to get Joyce back and Buffy's struggling to deal with Joyce's death, and Angel comes to visit. And it's kind of these different stories that are there, but don't quite have a beginning, middle, and end of their own, or if they do, it's a little lost. So that part of what I love in fiction is no, it's not. But then I love the big concepts. I love the concept of the key. I love Buffy's progression and her choice, how it is for her like a way of finding peace and her purpose to make this decision to step in for Dawn. And I like the philosophical aspect of it, where she says before that, if these are the choices, I don't want to live in a world like this. And she makes a choice to say, I am actually happier if I step in and protect my sister than if I let that happen to her. And either one will save the world. But there are no good choices. I forget what the line was from that episode way back with the character Ford who had the brain cancer. And she's like, you have a choice. It's not a good choice, but there's a choice. So I love all that about it. But the stories themselves don't always work for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have a real problem with kind of the central conceit of the key. If this woman is a hell god, why did some random monks create an edifice for this key that was so compelling or so strong that a god can't tell where the key is or who it is or what it is? Like, I don't buy that.
You don't buy that if she is as powerful as she's supposed to be, why does she need to like chase Buffy and her cartoon pals around to find the key?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, you made her a god, albeit you didn't reveal that for a significant portion of the season. And then we don't even really understand until the very end of the season what the key actually really does. And
Right.
I sort of wonder if maybe the writer's room hadn't figured it out. Like,
Oh,
hadn't
like they
fully-
went into the season and they were still sorting it out.
Right,
maybe.
that they hadn't quite figured out what they were going to do with this, because it feels very half-baked to me to start the season with this brand new character who's like, oh my God, it's the key. Okay, well, what is it? What does it do? How does a god not know?
The timing makes me wonder as well. And you guys might have an advantage here because I haven't as recently watched through to the end. But if the monks made Dawn 8 months ago or 10 months ago, where was the key before that? And Glory supposedly was somehow born in this, or not. She's sharing space with infant Ben, right? Who's supposed to be, I think, in his late 20s. So when did she start emerging? And then where was she before that? Because she's a hell god who was banished, I think they say, thousands of years ago. So I don't know if the timing works. But Roberta, you said, do you remember anything timing wise about it?
No, I never got the timing.
Okay.
The monks were part of one more like rando maybe they're a big bad and maybe they're not. But once you find out, I don't understand the monks. I don't understand. They feel ancient. So
yeah,
but they're not.
Yeah, they're 8 months ago.
Yeah, there's monks. There's like senti monks in hanging out near Sunnydale. So there's that.
And the Knights of Byzantium, when they have so many of them, why does it take them until Buffy's fleeing in a camper or whatever they're in, a Winnebago, to go after? Why not sooner?
And speaking of Renaissance fair, if nobody knew the key was human, but then everything about the final ritual is based around Dawn's humanity. They put her in that bad dress.
Oh, that's right. She has to bleed.
She has to bleed, but she was never going to be a human before that.
That's a really good call out. I didn't catch that at all, even though I just watched the episode where she was like, it could have been a log or a sneaker or whatever, but it's a person. It's an innocent. And yeah, that makes absolutely no sense. Nope. Roberta, you're absolutely right.
That's the first time I caught it. I was like, wait a minute. That's dumb.
Yeah,
They
because
sort of kind of, there's like a line that sort of gets you there, but it's pathetic.
I feel like there was a point when that occurred to me, and then it kind of went out of my head again because I got to like the season better because of all those kind of philosophical issues. Now, am I the only one who watched it while it was airing in real time? Did you both come to it later?
Later.
I think for me, when I watched it in real time, yeah, there was a lot I didn't love and there was a lot I did. Like Kerry said, there are some amazing episodes, but I was mixed on it. And then when the DVDs started coming out and I was able to watch the show closer together, I was just so in awe of the story arcs because I hadn't seen a show before that did that, where you had a season-long, really definite arc that had this story. And then season 5 really impressed me because of the scope of it and, isn't that cool what they did? And I feel like I started overlooking some of the things I didn't love about it.
I mean, it's really, when you look at the totality of it, Buffy, everything starts so light. Dracula is the worst thing that's happening.
Right.
Riley, everybody's just being the Scoobies, everything's fine. By the time you get to the end, you're like, Riley? Who? And I understand that's a popular sentiment, but it's so long ago. She goes through so much. And there's a place later for this, but I'm just going to, there's nothing left for her in a terrible way. She went catatonic. She came out of that to slay. That's a muscle she's built, but ultimately she really never came out of it. And it really was a suicide.
That's interesting. Yeah. I'm going to watch for that as I continue with the season, but I think there's an argument for that even just in those 2 episodes you mentioned, because for someone to go catatonic, and I believe that Buffy would at that point, and then it's not like she comes out and, I've worked through all this and I'm feeling so much better. That's when she says, I don't know how to live in this world, and she wishes she could talk to Joyce. So while I think she finds peace and she seems happy when she makes that choice to stand in for Dawn, we see in season 6, she's back and she has to deal with all those feelings or not deal with them. Even though we're talking about season 5, I'm really curious, Kerry, if that's part of why season 6 worked for you, or did you see it as an outgrowth of 5, or were you just like, thank God we're done with 5 and this is something different?
No, for me, it's completely separate from season
Okay.
5. Yeah, I don't view season 6 really as an extension of 5 at all. I think that season 6 is more about trying to find one's true nature and how true nature is not of one kind or another. It's a blend of all sorts of good and horrible things. So yeah, I mean, I guess you start there in season 5, but I've never viewed it that way when I've watched it.
Yeah, I think I only started thinking about it with the podcast because I start thinking ahead to like, oh, we seem to have resolved so much at the end of 5.
Yeah.
But yeah, Roberta, you make a great point. It isn't really resolved. She comes out, she fights because that is what she does. But it's not like all those issues really, it's not like they went away.
It's definitely fun in the final episode. And I could see where for everybody, but you with your story and the different, as you were watching it in real time, as you described, when all the different elements come together, the hammer, the bot, right? Like and as each element comes in, that's fun. That's exhilarating. In fact,
the wrecking ball.
The wrecking ball, right. Xander with the wrecking ball, which I always, to jump ahead, it drives me crazy in season 7 when everyone acts like including Buffy, has never been up against a villain who was so much stronger than her and could knock her out. I'm like, hello, Glory. Hello, wrecking ball, troll hammer, like a Buffy bot. You could argue Caleb's somewhat stronger than Glory, but it's not like Buffy has not faced this before and they don't make any reference back to it. I understand you can't have her do all the same things, but I wanted the characters to say, okay, well, we did X and Y. Or Adam also far stronger than Buffy, but everyone acts like this is just unheard of. Of course, that's the annoying potentials, and that's a whole other thing, that it's an annoying potential who says that.
Oh, dear.
We won't go there. It'll be on forever.
Season 5. We're talking about season 5. We continue.
So I'm curious because we've been mentioning The Weight of the World where she went catatonic. And that, too, I feel like is an episode that strikes people so differently. So, Kerry, what did you think of that episode? Did it work for you? Did it not?
Hate it.
I just was guessing that might be the case. Today's episode of the podcast Buffy and the Art of Story is sponsored by my nonfiction book, Happiness, Anxiety, and Writing, Using Your Creativity to Live a Calmer, Happier Life. I wrote this book because I found for myself and many other creative people I knew that the same vivid imagination that helps us come up with compelling plot turns or character backstories or just tell great stories in whatever form we do can also lead to anxiety, because most of storytelling comes down to asking what if, and often coming up with the worst possible answer. What if this woman who loves someone so much finds that person dead the night before they're about to move in together? That was the premise of my first detective mystery, The Worried Man. And in real life, those kinds of questions can lead to spinning through endless negative outcomes and thinking about the worst thing that could happen and whether you'll be able to deal with it, which for me usually happens when I wake up in the middle of the night. So Happiness, Anxiety, and Writing shares ways to instead use imagination and writing skills to create more calm and happiness. From the book, you'll learn techniques to derail anxious, repetitive thoughts like the ones I just mentioned, ways to talk to yourself and other people, deliberately choosing your words to promote more calm rather than reinforcing your worries, specific targeted exercises to direct your creativity and imagination in positive ways, and how to rewrite the best parts of your life and relive them to feel overall happier and calmer. That's Happiness, Anxiety, and Writing, Using Your Creativity to Live a Calmer, Happier Life by L.M. Lilly. Link in the show notes, or you can go to writingasasecondcareer.com/happiness. Do you have a why?
Not really. It just doesn't work for me. And I wish I had some sort of really intelligent justification for my feelings about it, but I just hate it. I don't.
It's okay to just have feelings. It's okay to feel what you feel.
You.
Speaking of episodes blending, there's the episode where they run away. She's catatonic at the end, right?
At the very end.
Yeah,
and then the
it's
next episode
spiral.
is Willow getting her out of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Right. It's the runaway one that is so utterly hateable for me. And then there's some great stuff in it. Listen, it
There
has
is.
the Ben is glory scene, which I was laughing out loud as many times as I've seen it, as arguably ableist as it is. Because part of what's so funny is Tara, like, being all not there. But
Oh, yeah.
it's one of the funniest things ever. And so there's that. But I hate the binge of it. I mean, I hate the running away. I hate the caravan. I hate night skies. I hate it.
We're here for you, Roberta.
That's right. This is Buffy therapy session, actually. We're going to talk feelings. We're going to validate each other. Hey, I'm sort of surprised that I liked the one where she is catatonic for almost all of it as much as I did, because normally I'm not a fan of dream episodes. Oh, it's all a dream. I'm a very, I like linear stories in large part, which I've talked with this about Roberta with some of the Mad Men episodes that have suddenly there's a dream sequence or there's something you don't know if it's a dream or not. I had trouble in the body with some of the imaginings Buffy has because I didn't get it right away. So I'm shocked, but Weight of the World works really well for me. And I think it's partly because although it is happening in Buffy's mind, it has real effect in the real world. It's not a dream and then, it didn't make any difference. And it's not a exactly just symbolic dream. There is an actual progression for Buffy. And I love that Willow keeps watching it and figures out what it is, helps Buffy get to the point of it. So I end up liking that a lot, which is another thing that normally, I think if somebody else wrote it, someone not quite as skilled, I probably wouldn't have liked it.
There's a hell of an emotional punch of watching little Buffy meet her baby sister. I mean, that's very powerful in this whole weird Dawn thing.
And that moment when Buffy finally says, like, this is the moment I gave up. And it's just in her head that for just a second, she thought, well, Dawn would die and people would feel bad for me, but I would be done. And I think maybe because I live in my head a lot, like for me, that's so powerful. That feeling is like, yeah, I can have massive amounts of anxiety or guilt over something that never, ever happened, but that I just contemplated. And for me, I identified with it. And also so much of season 5, there are those gripping emotional moments. And there's so much I'll forgive if that's there. There's that moment in the episode that you can't stand where they're running away, where Giles tells her he's everything he could have ever wanted in a Slayer, and he's proud of her, and she thinks he's dying. And I cry every single time.
The moment with when they figure it out, one thing it offers is it shows just how on she always is, on duty, how her whole being is always, this is who I am and this is why I'm fighting. She only had one moment, but also I feel like that's the suicide glimmer right there.
Oh, interesting. Right. Because that moment is, sure, she's talking about, well, Dawn would die and people would feel sorry for me. But there's also I could just quit. And really the only way for a Slayer to truly quit is to die because the monsters will keep finding her. Let's talk about the body. I just finished editing it. So is there something particular you were thinking about with it, Roberta?
I always loved it, or at least was fascinated by it, and it moved me. And the last time I watched it, I promised myself that I wouldn't watch it again. Like, it did its job.
Yeah.
And then I took 2 weeks off again because I was like, the body is next. What do I do?
Mm.
And you have to be ready for it because you're going to cry. So I finally was like, all right, I'm going to watch it because I couldn't remember if there was anything of other, sometimes other things happen. And I didn't think anything did that would like affect the arc, but I wanted to make sure. And this time I was like, meh. It seems upon this viewing more like an idea. Like I have a cool idea. I'm going to do a death of her mother like this. And I'm going to do all these cool tricks. And I get why Joss did it. Like the angles and and the body being so, everything was so, tactile and
physical,
the naked vampire. Right. But it's more interesting it's more fourth wall exposed, interesting than it. Again, it's emotionally effective. So maybe I'm being too hard on it. But this time I was like, I don't know. It feels so staged and fake. And I think it was supposed to feel the opposite of it. I think it was supposed to be like, this is how people are. And I get that this is how people are, but people are not quite that awkward and weird. And they don't actually punch walls. It was a lot.
It was very visceral. Like, I think it was supposed to be very visceral, but whether it felt that way, when I first watched it, I also think I didn't understand that this was a different episode. I was waiting it for, okay, when is it going to be like a Buffy episode? When are the monsters going to show up? I liked it better the second time I watched it. And then, like I've talked about later, personally identified more. But what about you, Kerry? Because what was the body for you? Is that one of those great season 5 episodes, or is it one of the ones that you were just not into?
When I rewatched it this time, let me just preface this with saying that I am a person who never cries at television. There is one television show I cry at. It's 6 Feet Under. There will never be another television show that I cry at, I feel like. So I'm not someone who, like Roberta, kind of preps themselves like, oh my gosh.
I'm a crier.
Yeah, right. That's just not me. So I was able to kind of come to this, and I feel like I always have a little bit kind of academically because I knew what the body was before I saw it.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't a surprise to me when I saw it. This time when I watched it, I thought my first reaction was, this is like if someone gave a high schooler an assignment, write a play about the stages of grief. This is what that high schooler would write.
Interesting. It is stages of grief, but go ahead, Roberta. Sorry.
No, it's exactly. It feels like a project. That's what I mean. Like by idea, that's actually a better way of putting it. It feels like he gave himself a
writing assignment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then I sort of stepped back for a second and thought, but wait a minute. That was who was the target audience for this show, was kind of high school to college age people, maybe young adult, like just past college, who maybe hadn't lost a person close to them yet. Maybe that was actually the goal, was to kind of normalize all of this behavior that maybe the target audience hadn't really thought about yet. And maybe that's okay. And then I had the third thought, which was maybe I saw this on a director's commentary at some point. So if I'm quoting Joss Whedon back to us, sorry about that. This may not be an original thought. The show constantly deals with death as dusting. And this was a real opportunity to make death visceral and affecting and emotional and last longer than the split second it takes for the dust to clear. And so ruminating in that kind of pot of emotions might have felt really great for the writer's room, for Joss, for the audience even. So even though it, where is Glory? This is the exact moment that she should be stepping in. If you have the hell god, she gonna be like, oh, your mom died? Guess what? Even though that is not believable, it doesn't really hang with the rest of the season. It is a part. I think it serves an interesting purpose, if not an effective purpose, I guess.
Oh, go ahead, Roberta. You look like you had a good thought.
I'm trying to also place it in its time where a project like that, an assignment like that, was a more novel, it was before the golden age of television, your Sopranos and 6 Feet Under and The Wire and Mad Men changed everything. So it was a bold move for commercial television. I got to give them some props, but.
And it was their Emmy submission that year, right? That episode got an Emmy. Either for writing or directing. You got an Emmy for something.
Yeah, I'll have to look and see, because now that makes me curious. But that would make sense. And I think that is a good point, that at the time it probably was very unusual to have that type of episode.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, I just listened to the commentary. So Joss Whedon didn't say the thing you just said, Kerry, but not to say that some other, writer or someone else on the show might have said it. But one thing he did say was he had grown up watching TV and movies that showed death as this like transformative experience, and it either brings people together or they have these amazing revelations or it brings this clarity. And in real life, he felt that death divides people and that there is no great revelation. There is just you have to deal with not just the grief, but the fact that there is a body and all these things that have to be done. And that he had a lot of people write to him to say he wasn't trying to bring people catharsis, but that they found catharsis in somebody just showing that, it doesn't necessarily bring you closer. It might drive you apart, and that it isn't this, but it brought me this clarity or it brought me this beauty. That's what I found in it later in my life that helped me. And probably there weren't shows that did that. Now there probably are a lot more examples where there isn't this, we put the death in and it's this transformative experience. But then I'm guessing that was really unusual.
What year was this episode? Do you know?
I want to say 2001. Pretty sure it was 2001. Yeah.
Trying to remember when Gary died on 30-something, which was a very, obviously a very different treatment, but a significant TV death that was unexpected and different and bold also around the same time. But not that it's important.
But it is interesting though. So now I want to look that up as well, just to see, because I watched that on and off, but I didn't see that episode and I don't remember when exactly time frame it was. Well, one thing we haven't talked about is Giles killing Ben, which is an interesting choice to me. I completely buy that Giles would do it, but I had this thought as I was going through the season for our discussion is, do you think Giles would have ever told Buffy that he did that if she'd survived that day? I think there was no way he was going to tell her when she came back and was so depressed and everything. But do you think he would have ever told her if they beat Glory and they stopped what was happening and neither she nor Dawn died?
Yes.
Maybe.
And there's a time and a place where he would have told her. And it's in season 7 where he's having the conversation with her about what she's willing to do to defeat the first evil. And she's saying, they're talking about when she allowed Dawn to continue living and she sacrificed herself. And Giles says to her, but you would do it differently now. And she admits that she would. Yeah, I think that he would have added it to that conversation during season 7 and been like, I cleaned up for you then. I shouldn't have to do it now.
Oh, interesting. I think you're right. If he was going to tell her, that would be it. Because I remember being surprised when she said, yes, I would do it differently. But I think she's seeing like what happened when she died, that we're told brings it out of balance. The first evil is able to come forward. All the things that come out of that,
right?
She would want to avoid all of it and would feel like that duty to do that would be stronger. But why do you think he didn't then? Because he could have told her at that point.
I think that he's already made his point. I think if she tried to say, no, I would still do it the same way, maybe that's what gets him to that point where he actually tells her.
And so what do you think, Roberta? You think he would have told her?
I don't think he would have offered it up, but I think if she started sniffing around about it, I think Buffy was wrong and Giles was right. And, Buffy was she was foolish to let him live. There was a little bit of like, I ain't got time for this. I got to go save my sister.
Yeah.
And listen, she, killing a human is not her thing. But to me, there is no moral, part of what they did with Ben's character is they made him choose to sacrifice Dawn for himself so that it was easier for us to allow him to be murdered.
Yeah, I agree. So that we wouldn't feel mixed about Giles doing that.
But it's a no-brainer. I mean, nice or not nice, it's a no-brainer. Sorry, Ben, that's a you problem. This is not just our world, but all the world.
Yeah, it's the yes, it's the entire world. It's all the worlds. It's
You gotta go.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that same argument about Dawn, but Buffy Ben's the one that is linked to Glory.
Right.
And actually, I take back what I said. You can't make the same argument because Glory would still be around and would still be terrorizing the world and multiple worlds, even if you killed Dawn. So that's why Ben had to go. You guys are making me feel better because I've always thought, should I feel like Giles did the wrong thing? Because I feel absolutely sure that he did the right thing.
100% did the right thing. It had to.
Well, I also think the show did not want us to see Buffy kill Ben like that Buffy's character, maybe she would have done it, but that was not what the series wanted in Buffy as a hero. They didn't want us, the viewers, to have to see her do that.
Well, and that to me is the moment. If there is a moment in season 5 that foreshadows season 6, that's the one. Because to me, season 6 is who are you and who do you choose to be? And Giles is making a very definite choice in that moment about who he is and what he's willing to do.
And he knows himself really well, because I didn't feel he was conflicted about it. Maybe a tiny bit because he explains it to Ben, but I felt like Giles, he knew he would make that choice. That's
Ripper's
his
still
choice.
in there.
Right.
Yep. But also there's a thing, I mean, certainly from season 3, but it's a theme, it's a trope, I think, not just in this verse of, once you taste blood, and
Right.
there's none of that with Giles. Giles isn't going to start to become Jack the Ripper. See what I did there? No, it's very clear. He made a choice really consistent with his values. Boom.
Speaking of season 3, I know I'm going backwards, but there is that issue of Buffy is willing to kill Faith and take her to Angel to let Angel drain her blood. And yet the series as a whole continues to treat it as Buffy would never take a human life. And she's so devastated the 2 times that she thinks that she did. And I've never really reconciled that. I understand it's almost like a self-defense thing since Faith is the one who shot Angel with the arrow. But then why can't Buffy kill Ben?
Well, Buffy couldn't kill Faith.
Well, she tried, though. She was willing to try.
She did stab her.
Is this when Faith falls off the building? Right?
Yeah, she stabs her in the stomach and she's like...
Right.
So I guess we don't know if Buffy certainly went there planning to do it, but we don't really know if she would have gone all the way.
Well, the show doesn't let her, right?
Right.
The show gives her a free pass. The show lets her take a step and not finish the job.
Yeah, and then Angel drains Buffy's blood, but Buffy lives.
Right.
So there's a slight, subtle suggestion there that perhaps she could have weakened Faith enough to take her to Angel, and he could have done the same thing and not killed Faith. Maybe. But I still find it a little inconsistent.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but what I'm thinking about now is what I just said about Giles. Giles made a clear choice consistent with his morals. Buffy was kind of out of control.
Yeah.
It was hard not to root for it, but this was about
with Faith,
her being pissed off and her boyfriend. And listen, Faith was terrible. Faith was terrible, and Faith was worse in season 4, arguably, with the switching thingy.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a rash, vengeful decision of a teenage girl.
Yeah. Yes, this is true. Buffy, I often forget that Buffy is a teenage girl. And I think that's partly intentional on the show's part, but it's so easy to think of her as being so much older.
The 20-year-old who's playing her or whatever.
Right. And even if it weren't, but yes, particularly. Well, we haven't talked yet about season 5 Spike. So I'm curious what both of you think about Spike's arc in season 5. If you are finding this podcast helpful and you want to learn more about story structure or are looking for information about writing or publishing, you can check out the articles on writingasasecondcareer.com. You can also find free story structure worksheets there or through the link in the show notes.
So Spike is my favorite Buffy character.
He's one of my faves too.
I like him better than Buffy. I like him better than everyone. I don't usually go for this, which I think is a trick of the writer's room. I think that the writer's room, by the time we get through season 4, has discovered that they have more in James Marsters as an actor than they thought.
Mm-hmm.
And they decide to take him places that they very obviously did not intend the character to go when he first shows up in Sunnydale, right? He first shows up, he's killing teachers in the hallway on parents' night. Okay. And then they discover that he's got more in him as an actor. And so they sit around the table and they're like, what are we going to do with him? And we get Fool for Love to explain that, in my opinion, Spike is in season 5 who he has always been, which is a hopeless romantic, a man dying to fall in love, willing to do basically anything for it, including taking on the persona of a vicious killer. So,
oh, interesting.
I
so
believe that we are now explaining earlier behavior with a new lens in season 5. So I think that once you watch Fool for Love, once I watch Fool for Love, I am now like, oh, Spike was the Spike that Drusilla wanted when they showed up in Sunnydale.
Wow.
I never thought about it that way, but it works. The idea
I don't usually
that...
go for that stuff. I don't like it when we rewrite history, but because I love Spike, I'm willing to give him this.
You could see that, because Drusilla also kind of rescues him from where he is so frustrated, and Cecily has completely trounced him, and so Drew rescues him from that. And but I never thought about it as he becomes the killer that she wants, which is really interesting when you think about how Angel's story that we get in the crossovers could not, once he had his soul back, he could not go back to being the killer that Darla wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Spike does a lot more. I feel like he has more range of choice of how he acts. Maybe not who he is, but how he acts. Because even with the soul, he does some pretty terrible things. And without the soul, he does some wonderful things that Angel without a soul would never do. But what about you, Roberta? What do you think?
One of the things about Spike this season that on this watch annoyed me is I don't think you have to have watched the whole series or watched the whole season to see that he's sort of becoming like, every time somebody protests and is like, but Spike, you're not our friend. Why are you here? What are you doing? It feels more and more artificial. I mean, Fool for Love was a date. I don't understand why it didn't get, why his participation as a Scooby member, as much as he says I'm not, and it just felt that all fell flat for me. It's hard to parse, like, what is he? Because he doesn't have a soul, but he always has a heart.
Yeah.
And that's what when Drusilla, that they get into that, oh no, we love, and that's always been clear. So one of my favorite Spike moments is when he's with the first, like, the pre-bought doll or whatever, and he picks the fight with Buffy, and he ends up like going nuts and knocking her head off.
Yes. Yeah, with the mannequin. He keeps trying to apologize.
Like, he starts off all sweet, and then he's like, you bitch. It's hilarious. And I feel like that is Spike taming himself or not. It's interesting. Whatever it is, he really always did love Joyce, did honor Joyce, and felt honored by her. And I feel like that was a bigger part of his transformation as it is than maybe gets credit for. Like, part of why he cares for Dawn is for Buffy, but there's some Joyce there too.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of season 5 is Spike, that he does have this respect for Joyce, and that she does treat him with respect. She does treat him with kindness. I feel like we get this is our best Joyce, and it is, I also just feel like it says a lot about how you treat people and what it brings out in them. Not always, but certainly they are a good argument for that she is kind to him, and she knows he's a vampire, but she also is always polite, and she always asks about him and listens to him, and he appreciates it. It's not like he doesn't appreciate it. He does. But that brings me to one of my issues with season 6, which is I feel like what they do with Spike And I'll have to see when I re-watch if this is true, but in my memory, Spike in season 6, it seems like he doesn't care about Dawn anymore. He had all these great moments and he did really seem to care about Dawn and what happened to her and do a lot that wasn't about getting Buffy's favor, things that would make Buffy mad. And then in season 6, it's like the writers just abandoned that for the most part. And that's my memory. And that I feel like we lose that relationship. Since you like season 6, Kerry, is that something you've thought about?
You're sort of shocking me because that's not how I remember season 6, but it has been a while since I rewatched the whole thing.
And I could be remembering wrong. We'll have to see. Do you remember, Roberta? Did it? Yeah. Okay.
I'll have to revisit. I don't remember. I mean, my first or second was, well, she's getting older and maybe it doesn't feel so safe.
Oh, like it starts seeming kind of creepy.
Yeah. From like maybe he's being more responsible for that, but that's a lot of layers.
Yeah. I mean, he does try to help Buffy find her, but everything for Spike is about Buffy, Buffy, Buffy in the early part. Well, almost all of the season. I also remember he just didn't seem to care when she would say things like, but I need to go home because Dawn is there alone. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to me he was more selfish in that and less concerned. But I'll have to see what I think when it comes up. Maybe if we do this again, the end of season 6,
we'll have to regroup.
I'll make him know. We'll talk about it. Don't be mad. But okay.
I want to talk about Riley.
That is so funny because I was about to say, we don't have that much time left and we haven't talked about Riley.
I mean, there's a whole thing that is the first part of the season.
And you and I, Roberta, have talked about Riley, but Kerry and I have not. Oh, go ahead.
A couple things and then I will shut up. Watching the sort of second part of it. I won't get into the does Buffy or doesn't Buffy love, or is he the one? We can touch on that if you want, but you and I have covered that. But watching him go to the vampires and then go back to Buffy and in a very Joss Whedon as a secret incel dialogue, flips it right onto her. She says, I can't believe you do this. And he says, well, what about you? Right.
Right.
I mean, but he really does. He really flips it right on her and she kind of takes it. So there's that. And this is me again. There I am seeing the mental health issues, but he is an addict. When they come and get him, when they put him on that helicopter, I can't believe they would take him. He is sick looking, and rejoining the military isn't going to snap you out of that. He is sick looking, never addressed. And I said this to you before.
Yeah.
That he went through what he went through with the initiative and he was being secretly drugged. And I think there was TSD there. I don't think this was scripted well. I think it should have been, it's not just Buffy love him enough or doesn't love him. He's been through all this. He is a vet.
Yeah.
Never saw it before. And I can't believe they're going to let him run and.
Yeah. That is a really good point. Cause sure, we saw him go through withdrawal, but then it's as if, okay, well, that's done. And yet he still had that chip in him. So then he takes that out and it's like he's supposed to be okay.
Now he's getting his blood drained regularly.
Yeah, for kicks, right. For that jolt of excitement.
And that's part of what he's
that is not dealt with at all. And when he comes back, he's all good. Well, the love of a good woman, you know.
I've met a woman who can't. Anyway.
So, Kerry, what do you think? I don't remember I'm sure we talked about Riley at some point in our Buffy discussions, but I don't remember.
Yeah. I love Roberta's point. I definitely never thought about that before. It makes perfect sense. I was really trying to pay attention to Riley this watch through and think about like, why don't I like him? Because when we meet him in season 4, I do like him. And then in this season, I'm just like, get away, like, bye. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't put my finger on what was going on because I agree with Roberta. Like, he's just not well written. It's very wishy-washy. Some episodes, he's very much like, why won't you let me in? And then in other episodes, you're like, oh, Riley's still here. Like, where were you? It's very strange the way that they have him kind of in and out of this season. Then I was just kind of like, I don't have any feelings about her. When Xander gives her the woe-begotten lecture about why won't you just love him? He's sort of me, only stronger and better. She turns around and runs after he tells her to run. I'm like, why? Like, why are you going there? I don't understand. Did you just buy wholesale what Xander was just telling you? Because I don't understand why you're running to catch the helicopter. And I don't know why I stopped liking Riley as a character. And maybe it's just the mishmash that he was this season and like Roberta said, the addiction that kind of took him over that was never defined.
And all he was a vehicle for Buffy to feel bad about herself and view herself as somebody who pushes people away.
Totally.
When he was going to vampires to have the suck on him.
I didn't love him in season 4. I didn't hate him when I first met him, but I wasn't excited about him. But in season 5 in Dracula, it really put me off that Dracula's there. They're all talking about how powerful he is. He's bitten Buffy. And so Buffy is in great danger here. And for Riley, it's just all about Riley. It's all about boo-hoo. Buffy fell under Dracula's thrall, and that must mean that she really wants to be with Angel and she doesn't love me. And I feel like I want to have sympathy because a jealousy can be, we've all felt it sometimes. And even if we feel like we shouldn't, but it's just hard for me because I want to shake him and say, okay, it's Dracula. Buffy is not perfect. She's not she's not impervious to every evil thing out there. Maybe think about how to help her fight and focus on that, not, I'm going to feel inadequate because she let Dracula bite her.
Well, and he brings that up again in the final lecture, let's say.
Yeah, the hold
Buffy
that Angel and Dracula have over her.
It's like, you're still not over this for 12 episodes since that.
Yeah, Buffy got over it in one episode. And
exactly.
He's the Ross Geller of Joss Whedon's.
Oh, my gosh.
So anything else on Riley that either of you wanted to talk about?
Bye, boy.
They didn't write him well, and especially in this season.
Mm-hmm.
None of it was about writing a good character. It was all about how is this going to affect Buffy from the writing standpoint.
I forget who, I was talking to another writer recently who was saying she knows, she figured out her plot and her main characters were really well developed. And she said, yeah, I knew the other characters weren't because they were just doing the things I needed them to do to make the plot work. And she's like, I know I need to go rewrite that. And it sounds like what you're saying, and I think it's right, is Riley is basically doing the things that we need him to do to propel the story. But he's not that well developed. And I'm with you, Roberta. I think he's got a strong story there. I didn't really think about the addiction as much, but I definitely thought about the losses Riley has had and that loss of identity and that figuring out who is he outside the military. And we just never really give him the space or let him work through that. And you wouldn't have to see it all on screen. It could be enough that we know that Riley's going through this, but we never quite got that. Instead, it's all put on Buffy. It's all because it's all Buffy's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all about her flaws.
Right. Her being too selfish or self-absorbed or not letting him in. And I got to agree with you that, yeah, she does not let him in. And it probably does say something about how she feels or doesn't feel about him. But that's not a character flaw. That's just she doesn't feel that way about him.
Or it could be a character flaw.
Because it could be.
You never get to find out. But so it was a different discussion and we had it. But as I said, the way that Angel showed up and she just took his hand was never going to be Riley for her.
Yeah. And you could see where he recognized that much sooner than she did.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been nice to see him have some development, but I'm happy he was gone. So there we go. Any last thought on season 5? Do you want to start, Kerry?
Yeah. So I actually watched, not just was doing something else and had on in the background, The Replacement this time.
Oh, okay. That's the two Xanders.
Two Xanders. And I hate the Zeppo. So I have convinced myself that I hate all Xander episodes because I don't like the Zeppo. It's just not my thing. To each their own, right? So I actually watched The Replacement and was delighted just because I went into it okay, I've really got to watch this. I'm doing this podcast. I got to be diligent. And I actually watched it. I was like, oh, this is actually a great episode for Xander to learn that there is something inside of him that he has always ignored. that there is an actual adult who is capable of mature behavior and,
Who's good at his job. And
yes, exactly. And that maybe if he just got out of his own way, that side of him would come out more. And I think that he actually does grow as a character after that episode. We start to see him do more of that. Of course, right after he gives Buffy the lecture in Into the Woods, he goes home and gives Anya the most beautiful declaration of love that is very much stepping into who he is as a man, right? And I just thought, you know what? They did a good job with Xander in The Replacement and with him in this season. He still gives lectures that I don't appreciate,
right,
and has some real problems, but on the whole, good job.
Yeah, I think Xander improves in season 5, and yeah, it's a good point. The Replacement is a good turning point for him.
Step in the right direction.
So what do you think, Roberta? You can talk about Xander, and then you could also give your last thoughts on season 5.
It's one of these things where you there's so many episodes, but I think you're right. I think we start to see a more confident Xander after that. And remember, this season begins with him declaring, I am done being everybody's bitch.
Oh, right. Yes. In the Dracula episode.
Yeah. It's great. You can make a declaration like that, but then not know how to get there. And we saw how hard he is on himself. We saw his worst self. So yeah, it's a good turning point. Thoughts on season 5? I think we sort of unconcealed some of what doesn't work about Glory. She's too dragged out. And again, there's confusion about who the big bad is, but there isn't a shift in who the big bad is.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't first it's this one, it's this. And what we haven't talked about it was originally written knowing if it was going to be the series finale. Am I right about that?
Yes, I think that's right. And when I watched it
to the other network, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know in real time. I didn't know there was going to be a season 6, and I was devastated when Buffy died at the end. I was just like, what?
You thought that was the end.
Yeah. And this other friend of mine who was a huge fan, and she didn't know either. And within seconds of that last scene, she was on the phone to me saying, what is this? What's going on? How can this be? This can't be right. So I think that's right. I think it was written as a finale of the series.
My other thought of the season is, and we've talked about this, but I was more focused on the first half and when Dawn is introduced, watching her deal with her mother's death so badly and be so angry at Buffy was once again ridiculous. People go through what they go through, but it's like just, we never met
a 14-year-old,
even though when we meet Buffy, she's 15. So yeah. She's so inappropriately dopey. And then by the end, they kind of pull it together.
Yes. I think Dawn, she's very interesting in those the last episode in particular. I just recorded Forever, which is the one after the body. And yeah, I understand Dawn feeling isolated and alone. And I think that happens often in grief because people grieve differently. But I agree, I still struggle with the way she behaves, I guess. It does feel continuously younger than she is and not really true to her character, although I don't know how I can say that because that's how she's been built. But
it's so selfish. I mean, Buffy just lost her, and here's Dawn acting like Buffy's the bad guy in the loss of
right.
Yeah, it's just it's implausible again.
Yeah, I find her a little more relatable in season 6 because Buffy is so detached and it's a longer time that Buffy is just not there for her. But it is hard to see it in the immediate aftermath of Joyce's death. Well, thank you so much, both of you. I've really loved talking with you both about season 5, and I'm so glad you got to meet. It's so great to have multiple friends who are huge Buffy fans and who do podcasts. So it's a great combination.
Harry, it was great to meet you. And so I will talk Buffy till
Yes. and me too.
This was great, girls.
Thank you again, Roberta and Kerry, for being here. That was so much fun. And thank you to all of you for listening to Buffy and the Art of Story. As I said, I'll be taking a break, but please come back in 4 weeks for Season 6, Episode 1, Bargaining, Part 1, where Willow, Xander, Tara, and Anya try to bring Buffy back from the grave. You can listen to back episodes of Buffy and the Art of Story at lisalilly.com/BuffyStory or lisalilly.com/YouTube. Comment on the episodes or connect with me on Instagram or Twitter at Lisa M. Lilly, or by visiting the Buffy and the Art of Story Facebook page, or email your comments to buffystorypod@gmail.com. Find book editions of Buffy and the Art of Story at lisalilly.com/BuffyBooks. Music for this episode was written and performed by Robert Newcastle. Buffy and the Art of Story is a production of Spiny Woman, LLC, copyright 2022. All rights reserved.